Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual neurolinguistic programming and cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage counseling using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMB Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoachddanamzallag.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our second episode of season 24, a very special guest and psychiatrist, Dr. Fred Moss. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Dr. Fred, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Ten. Comment vas-tu aujourd'hui?
Je vais très, très bien. Merci.
Très bien. So that's about it for my French. So we've gotten to the end of that. So let's start the episode. So my name is Dr. Fred, and I'm a psychiatrist, like Dan said. I've been a psychiatrist for 36 years. And before that, I was in the mental health field for another 9 years as a child care worker. And moving backwards from that, I had actually dropped out of college for the second time. Before I became a child care worker. I'd had a life, living with a really beautiful, we've all had beautiful families, even if we didn't like them, even if we were mistreated. We've all had beautiful families. How do I know that? Because they got us to be where we are today. Mm-hmm. And so I certainly grew up in a beautiful family. I had, I was born to a family in chaos and disarray. I had two brothers, 10 and 14 years older than me. And I had my parents, and I just wanted to learn how to communicate. I would watch them talk to each other. I remember being in my playpen and seeing them talk and wishing that someday I'd be a big boy and I could talk like them. And I thought that school was actually going to teach me how to do that. But, school failed me in that way. Early on, I was like, I wanted to learn how to, I was a precocious child. I had these brothers. They taught me about lots of things that most kindergartners didn't know. I knew how to read and to write and to do math very early on. And I just wanted to learn how to talk and make a difference. So I talked a lot in elementary school, but there's no elementary school teacher that ever forgot having Fred as a student. I'm pretty sure about that. And I really just wanted to get, I was smart. I was kind of too smart and too talkative. You probably knew people like that when you were growing up. That was me. And I went through school. I went through junior high, hoping that would be better, and it was worse. And then high school, I was hoping it would be better, and it was worse. Then I went to college. And I was hoping in college that I would finally learn how to communicate. I went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, University of Michigan. I thought, oh yeah, this will be a place. There's protests here, and there must be something going on where I can learn how to speak. But even in college, it didn't work out for me. I was in engineering school, and I didn't like that. I dropped out and took a bus across the country to find myself in Berkeley, California. And I found myself, but it was unsustainable. They told me to come back and go to college one more time because there was this new field. There was this new industry that was bursting, and they thought I would be good at it. Okay. Maybe you've heard of that field. The name of the field was computers.
Okay, yes.
Heard of it, yeah. So they thought that I would be good, that I had the aptitude for that. And I went there. There's only one computer in all of Michigan, and it was at the University of Michigan. So back to Michigan I went, 2-acre facility, batch jobs, punch cards all night long. And I was like, no, I'm sorry. That's not how I'm spending my life. And I dropped out again. And this is when my mom got me, she's like, okay, you don't have to go back to school, but you have to get a job. Moms, so they'll be like that. And so they got me an application for a state civil service job at a state mental health facility for adolescent boys. And I became a child care worker for afternoon shift. And I thought I would only last for 3 weeks. I just wanted to last for orientation because they were paying me $13 an hour, 40 hours a week, 3 weeks. Right? Like I could get myself a car and drive around the country and figure out what my life was about. That was my intention. So on the 4th week, my pal, Paul, he convinced me to stay and try out on the floors, go up to the floors with the kids. And, these weren't really kids. They were only like 6 years younger than me. But I went up there and that was the first time I was finally getting paid to communicate. I was getting paid to connect. I was getting paid to be with these kids, to actually see them and actually be with them and understand them and connect with them. And this was really, really amazing experience for me. And over the years, I began to really love being a child care worker, but I hated psychiatry.
Okay.
The future of psychiatry was really already in the air. Prozac wasn't yet invented, But when Prozac came invented, that was when I was in medical school. So I went back to school a third time with the sole intention of bringing communication to the psychiatric field. But while I was in school, Prozac was introduced, and Prozac changed the world. Prozac, as much as anything in the last 4 years that we think changed the world, Prozac had that kind of impact on the world. Prozac was on its own on the cover of Newsweek and the cover of Time. And they wanted to put it into water systems in Los Angeles and New York. It was really thought to be such the panacea. But I hated the whole idea. And but nevertheless, by the time I got spat out, there I was typecast to be a psychiatrist. I already, sunken costs. I'm here. It's time for me to do what they're asking me to do, which was diagnose and medicate, diagnose and medicate, diagnose and medicate. So over the next 35 years, I've had probably somewhere between 30 and 40,000 patients, and I've written well over 100,000 prescriptions, and each one of them was misaligned with who I was. So what do I mean by that? I really believe that medications are essentially not at all the first line, and frankly, don't often work at all as they're intended. And we'll get to that in a moment. I came out and I'm, been a psychiatrist. So there I was doing things that were misaligned with who I was, because I could see that people actually often got worse on these medicines, or maybe that these medicines were causing symptoms that were otherwise not there, including the symptoms that were marketed to treat. So in 2006, I did something different, which was I took my lower risk clients, the ones in my practice, I had a couple thousand people in my practice. I took them off their meds altogether with their consent. And you know what? They got better, way better, reliably better. Like their diagnosis disappeared. It was a remarkable experience, and it was pretty much unanimous. I was like, well, what the heck? And I wanted to scream this from the mountaintops. I wanted to be violent about it. And being violent about something doesn't really get the message across. But I was really pretty angry about it. And it was like, wow, what am I going to do? So that's when I started traveling around the country. I became a locum tenens and did work all over the country in every single modality that psychiatry has to offer. Inpatient, outpatient, nursing home, orphanages, homeless shelters, three-quarters houses, halfway houses, methadone clinics, Suboxone clinics, rehab centers, mental health clinics, you name it. I've been there in a leadership position, jails, prisons, and it was really, it was quite an experience to see that psychiatry is pretty uniform around this country, but not necessarily uniform around the world. I started taking my act around the world and did telepsychiatry back in the day, long before it was the gold standard. In 2012 and 13, I was teaching a course called Mastering Telehealth. And I was in Bhutan and Nepal and Thailand and Israel and France and Italy and England, and really just there to observe, there to be with other shamans, other medicine people, other clinicians and clients and patients and customers, or whatever people were calling them, and what was mental illness. And I learned that mental illness in one country is totally different than mental illness in another country. Well, that to me says that there's no definition of mental illness then. I mean, if the actual we're talking about, like, just because there's a different word in Paris than there is in Sacramento for a particular thing, it's still the same thing, right? Like a broken arm in Paris is a broken arm in Sacramento.
That's correct. Yes. But
mental illness in Sacramento is not the same as mental illness in Paris at all, or certainly not in Auckland or in Zimbabwe or Rwanda or Sydney or Singapore or Taiwan. It's different. Okay. So I really got to see that mental illness was a really vague, arbitrary concept, because it is. It's not even saying anything controversial here. And I really got to get a new role of what do people really want more than anything? And what people want more than anything is to be connected. And that's what, back to that same thing. Let's connect. Let's actually meet people where they are. Because on that moment, when that happens with anybody, 7.8 billion people, when you can get there and actually, boom, resonate harmonically with another person, that's when healing takes place at a level that no medication has ever created or ever will create.
That's why they teach you in NLP, actually.
Yeah, that's the whole point with NLP. Exactly. And as NLP often says, as far as I recall, you cannot not communicate. So there's this whole idea of like always being in touch, always being connecting, as you and I are working to connect here. So this was something that was really important for me to learn. And I really also learned that, I simply, that diagnoses were not necessarily a powerful item to utilize. So you were asking me even before the show, this difference between this mental health diagnosis and that mental health diagnosis and that mental health diagnosis. I am an undiagnosing psychiatrist. I am a non-diagnosing psychiatrist. Left to my own, I will not give you a diagnosis at all. Your diagnosis, you do have a diagnosis. Ready it is? It's Dr. Dan. That's your diagnosis, straight up. That's all you have. You've had your life. You're the only one who's had this life. That's your diagnosis. You got it. That's the only thing that actually makes any sense. Any conglomeration of so-called symptoms or experiences you're having, that you're afraid, or that you're scattered, or that you're nervous, or that you're depressed, or that you over-idolize, or that you have poor sleep, or you under-idolize, or you, or you call your intuition voices, or you have racing thoughts, or you're awkward in a crowd, or whatever it is, it's all good, man. It's all good. It's all part of this life experience.
Yeah, but then
go ahead.
Dr. Fred, if we look at everyone who's suffering from either bipolar or ADHD,
I don't have that. So yeah, I'm not going to use that as a premise.
Okay, but then again, they know that there's something off with them. So
I'm not going to go there.
Okay, so
every one of us knows that there's something. Once you get the diagnosis of bipolar, now you have bipolar, because in fact, now you're walking around knowing you have a diagnosis of bipolar, and that's the context from which you're living in.
Okay.
The truth is, beforehand, all you had was discomfort. That's all you had. And you went into a doctor who told you you had bipolar, you agreed with them, and now you have bipolar. For instance, let's say I walk into a doctor, I say, I have dry skin, I have a big nose, I love peanuts, I drink too much water, and I'm a mess in a china shop. And they say, oh, let me look. You're an elephant. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that makes so much sense. I look at the criteria, I'm an elephant. Now I walk out of that office entirely sure that I have my whole explanation for why I have these symptoms. And I am the elephant that I thought an elephant was before I came in.
Okay.
I am now the elephant that I thought an elephant was before I came into the doctor. I have now become that. Now, when I come home and I tell my brother, guess what? I know why I got all these problems with peanuts and stuff. And he says, what's that? I said, I'm an elephant. He said, Fred, you're not an elephant. I'm like, you just weren't there. I saw an expert. They told me I'm an elephant. Diagnoses get tossed around as if there's bipolar disorder as a real deal. Now, I want to make one disclaimer. It's very important because you have a real important listening here. If someone's out there and they're sure they have a diagnosis and they love their diagnosis and they love their therapist or their clinician and they love their treatment plan and they absolutely think their medicine is right and it couldn't get better and they wouldn't trade it for the world and they think that I'm wrong, please stay on exactly the path that you're on. If you reach that level with any aspect of life, good for you. Mm-hmm. Like anywhere, if you've gotten to the point where this is as good as it gets and I wouldn't trade it for anything, like seriously, that is fantastic. Please stay there. Mm-hmm. This conversation is for the hundreds of millions of people who don't have that going on.
Okay.
Who have been tossed around and they think that look, it's pretty universal that all of us think there's something wrong with us. It's so universal that it's a normal quality to know that you have something wrong with you. It is a essence of humanity to know that I'm different than everybody else out there. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because I compare my insides with everybody's outsides. I see that. I see, okay, I'm too quick triggered with my wife, or I buy things easily on Amazon, or I love God too much, or I chase sex down too hard. Oh, I must have bipolar disorder. What does that really do? What that really does, and again, with all due respect, is it not only categorizes me in a group, it limits or in fact relinquishes my responsibility for the part of my life that I'm not proud of. So that's not me. That's my bipolar disorder. That's not me. That's my ADD. That's not me. I'm a narcissist. That's not me. I've got autistic spectrum disorder. That's not me. It's PTSD. Yeah. That's not me. You see how it goes.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Fred. You mentioned earlier that if you go, you have a broken arm in Sacramento, and if you go to Paris, you have a broken arm. So do you know that here, if let's say I've got bipolar disorder in the
Yeah.
US, does it mean that in France it will be something diagnosed differently?
Indeed, for sure. Maybe not in France, but in Zimbabwe or Nairobi, for sure. Absolutely. 100%.
Will it be more accepted in a society that
Maybe you would even be promoted to shaman. It's hard to tell what would happen.
okay.
But you wouldn't be called bipolar disorder because bipolar disorder isn't really an entity. It became an entity in the middle of the 1900s. It's not a real deal. It's an explanation that you're outside in bipolar, and specifically, let's say, you're outside the range of what the clinician is comfortable with listening to.
Okay.
So what you as a clinician might call bipolar, I wouldn't call bipolar. I would call it human. So the person would come into my office and they would say, I got this and that going on. I like sex and I buy too many things and I'm impulsive and I don't know, hyper religious and I'm moody and I'm racing thoughts at night. I have all this. Okay, I got all that. Okay. I say, okay, welcome to humanity. And then I would tell them that their diagnosis is their name. Now, when I tell them then they say, hey, it's funny. Psychiatry is the only subspecialty where if you tell somebody that they're normal, they get pissed.
Okay.
It's the only subspecialty in all of medicine.
Yeah.
If I tell you you're okay, you're like, why did I even come here? Mm-hmm. See, people come there not to get answers, but to get confirmation that there's something wrong with them. That's what psychiatry is. It's not really looking, because if the answer is there's nothing wrong with you, people actually get upset about that. People want to hold on to that they have a condition, and that's what's limiting them from being their finest self.
Is it because they try to accuse the condition as to why they act a certain way, Doc?
Say that again?
Do you think that because they want to get diagnosed with a condition because they have something to point finger at?
In some ways, I would say that's it. Look, if I've made several mistakes already today. I don't know about you, but it's 11 o'clock and I've made a handful of mistakes today.
Okay.
Already. I've been unkind a couple times. I've said things I didn't wish to say. I did things in the wrong order. I didn't get some things done that I thought I would get done this morning. All of that is happening already all day in my life. Okay. If I could blame you for that, I would. Okay. Like Dr. Dan's responsible for that. It's not me. Here's the thing. It is me. And if you really want, it's me. And it's not anything to blame. I'm not upset with myself. That's just the essence of humanity. And if I can embrace the exquisiteness of the entire experience set of what it means to be human, including the terrible, including the miserable, including the painful, including the the disturbing and the upsetting, if I can include that in the entire human experience, then I won't have to see myself as being sick or wrong or ill or afflicted or defective. Okay. Maybe I'm not any of those. Maybe we don't blame a log for burning in a fire. Okay. Right? You put a log in a fire, it burns. That's it. Krishnamurti, he said something that I like quoting in a lot of these situations. And what he said is, it is no sign of mental health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Mm-hmm. Okay. So anyone who's acting like they got their act together in the face of the challenges, obstacles, and hurdles that we face every day is lying. Okay. So this is and we kind of already know this. We have adjusted, we have gone through so many contortions to try to pretend to be normal as described by the prevailing conversation only. Mm-hmm. We don't know what the hell it is to be normal. That's true. No one has ever described normal. It is not a universal understanding. Normal. So how in the world, if we don't even know what normal is, are we out there declaring that is abnormal? That's so true. But then again, if someone goes to you and they tell you, hey, doc, I went to a previous counselor or a health counselor, whatever it is, and I was diagnosed with bipolar or borderline personality. All the time. I've been misdiagnosed. I have a second opinion. So do you think that the people who come to you with those specific conditions, do they feel that
the symptom that they have do not align with what the previous counselor or therapist have mentioned or have diagnosed them with, because there's a lot of misdiagnosis happening every single day, even with experts that have been in the industry for 10, 15, 20 years, because maybe they just don't understand how to communicate with the patient. So do you feel that in your situation as a psychiatrist, you have seen that happen a lot of time?
Of course, 100, almost 100%. By the time someone comes to a psychiatrist, they've already had somebody tell them what's wrong with them.
Okay. So why are there so many mistakes happening?
I think the mistake is one level below. Diagnosing the person in the first place is the mistake.
Okay.
That's where I told you we would be different about this. When you told me that we were discussing this, this is the point that I told you. This is the point that I thought we would get to. So I want to tell you that. So here's my point. In most cases, giving someone a diagnosis is a traumatic experience. And then by definition, actually perpetuates the symptoms that you thought that you were giving them. So all of a sudden I have ADHD, and now because I have ADHD, being scattered or not meeting my deadlines or, not being able to focus becomes part of my life. I'm like, well, okay, I get it. That's me. That's what I do. Mm-hmm. And so then I take on the persona and the identity of that particular diagnosis. Now you want to hear something that's a little weirder than this.
Go ahead.
When I give you medicines, the medicines are designed to induce, increase, perpetuate, or sometimes actually cause the exact symptoms they're marketed to treat.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
But then again, Dr. Fred,
hit on that for a little bit before you jump into then again. Take a swallow on that one first. Okay, now hit me up with then again.
Now you said that people, when you diagnose people, which you said that this is not something that you like to do, it's a traumatic experience. But at the same time, earlier we said that if someone goes to the doctor and the doctor said that you have nothing wrong with you, then they feel pissed off because you didn't diagnose them. So exactly. Being diagnosed is a traumatic experience, but not being diagnosed, they feel pissed off because they know something is wrong.
Okay, so let's talk about what's happening there. What's happening there is that the choice for the people who are upset with hearing that there's nothing wrong with them, what am I really saying? All I'm really saying is, hey, you're responsible for your life. That's all I'm saying. Hey, and they're like, screw that, I am not.
Okay.
And if they want to argue that limitation that, no, I'm not, I have a condition, they can have that. And they can go next door and get a diagnosis. That's okay with me. I can't cure everybody. But I am a big stand that each and every human has agency and sovereignty and is in fact responsible for their authorship of their own life. Period. And if you want to act like an a-hole, then you can act like an a-hole. But don't blame some diagnosis for acting like an a-hole. If you want to, if somehow you're irresponsible or overbooked or inadvertently or even voluntarily or even intentionally hurt another person or hurt yourself or any like that, that's okay. It's not okay. I get it's not like I'm saying everything people do is fine. Just don't blame a diagnosis. Now, here's the problem. If you're on medication, and this goes for over-the-counter, under-the-counter, or prescribed medicines, they often actually cause the symptoms it's marketed to treat. Inadvertently, we don't know that. We don't blame the medicines most of the time. So if I give you a bipolar medicine, and in fact, I know it's going to make you more manic periodically, that's a good deal for the medicine company. That's for sure. If I can create a medicine that actually creates the symptoms that has you need to buy this medicine, dude, that's a business plan.
It's a cash cow. Yeah.
We're doing okay.
Yes.
And by the way, have you noticed that the pharmacology companies are doing okay?
Very much so. Yes.
With their profit margins? Have you noticed that it's over $1 billion a day cumulatively in profit margin alone?
Yes.
You can't have profit margin like that in a legitimate business.
No, you can't.
So this is an explanation that actually creates that. Now, I wish I would have designed it. I wish I could design a company that would create the symptoms that would have that people who have it need to come back to buy the same thing that's creating the symptoms. Oh my God, that's so cool. As such, it's wicked, but I'm not blaming the companies. I'm not blaming the big pharma, which it's not even a thing. It's just a, who knows, like a veiled, who do you call when you're calling big pharma? Yeah. And I'm not blaming the insurance company. I'm not blaming the doctors. I'm not blaming TV. I'm not blaming anyone. It's just a system that's in place. So when I looked at this after 2006, like, okay, how instead of being violent, how can I make a difference here? I was violent. You know, I wanted to take people to the top of the mountain, just shake them like, dude, stop doing this.
Okay.
What I realized, it is precisely when someone determines that there's something wrong with them that we have access to entering or exiting that cycle. So I'm not blaming the patient. I'm just saying that if you could see that this experience, including all the pain and discomfort and imbalance and dysfunction that comes with being a human, go back all the way to Socrates and Plato, and you'll see that it's been there across time.
Mm-hmm.
People have had a lot of trouble handling and managing the human condition. When you can see that that's part of that and there's nothing wrong with you, then you don't even have to enter the mental health system to find out what's wrong with you. Then you won't get your diagnosis, which is required to get your treatment, which is required to get your medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So where is it? Where is the best entryway? The best entryway is to help people see, hey, maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe this experience of super pain and discomfort and misery and intolerance and unspeakable drama is part of what it means to be human.
But then again, Dr. Fred, if you look at the NPD spectrum, okay, we have like a different, like we have vulnerable narcissism, we have covert narcissism, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But
how old do you think those two are, by the way?
Sorry?
How old do you think those two variants are?
Oh, I have no clue, to be honest.
Less than 2 decades.
Oh, wow. So here you go. But then it is proven that there's a hormone, they lack a hormone called vasopressin in their brain. And this is why they act a certain way. So is it true that this is what
I don't have that proof being solid at all.
Okay.
I really don't have that proof being solid. Any kind of proof of biological imbalance, of chemical imbalance or biological psychiatry is completely still up for grabs. And there is so much evidence that there is no such thing as biological psychiatry to really pay attention to that. Now, here's the thing. If these people are, putting themselves in toxic situations, or they've, like taking on certain traits, it is possible that by becoming that, that's what then happens to these chemicals and hormones. But I'm not going the other way around. I'm not going to go the other way around, that there's a hormone imbalance or a chemical imbalance that caused. All it is a correlation, if indeed it's a correlation. These studies are always questionable, 100%. I've been in some of these studies, and I'm telling you that the format of these studies is deeply, deeply questionable all the time.
Okay.
All the time. So the correlation, even if I was to agree with you that, okay, there's an elegant study that was done that showed that vasopressin is associated with some variant form of narcissistic personality disorder, it'd be like, okay, that's a correlation. You don't know anything else about it. They also drink too much orange juice. So what?
That's so
Are you saying that orange juice causes it too? I mean, you might be able to draw a correlation that they drink too much orange juice. Mm-hmm. And then you would have the audacity to say that orange juice causes NPD. Mm-hmm. You see, it's only a correlation at this point. It is not a proven interrelation.
The cause and effect is not bilateral. It's unilateral. It means one will cause it on one way, but not on the opposite way.
I don't know. I'd like to see the source of that study, and I'll tell you, I could shoot holes in it for sure. And anybody who knows how to do studies would be able to shoot holes in that too.
I see. For sure. Now, as before we conclude the podcast, Dr. Fred, what would you give the people who are dealing with some mental illness and they want to know, they want to have answers, they want to know exactly what is wrong with me? And you may say, well, nothing is wrong with you. But if they feel depressed, moody, and all the other symptoms that you see on the DSM-5, what would you say that, you know what, just continue living your life and don't worry?
No, that's, of course, do I sound like that's what I would say? No.
Okay, so then what would be the
does it really sound like that? I really want to make it clear. It doesn't sound like that's what I would say, right? I wouldn't. I would connect with them. And I would let them know that it's possible. There's nothing wrong with them. That it's just possible.
Okay.
That being depressed, do you want me to come up with 100 reasons to be depressed in the next 2 minutes?
If we had enough time, go ahead.
2 minutes.
if you have 2
You
minutes,
could do
go ahead,
it.
please.
You could do it. I'm not going to do it, but you could do it too. You want 100 reasons to be depressed?
Mhm.
Here they come. Let's flood them in. You want 100 reasons to be anxious? Here they come. You want 100 reasons to be terrified? Here they come. You want 100 reasons to be confused? Here it is. You have an opportunity to be those things in response to what's happening in the world. But when you get centered and when you get mindful and when you get detox, when you take yourself away, from the elements that are causing the discomfort, and when you then are able to resonate harmonically and join in a human connection with another human being, the magic of healing takes place no matter who they are. I have seen this with lifers inside of the prison. I have seen this with severely mentally ill inside of inpatient units. As soon as you get to be with somebody, that is when the magic occurs. That is where healing and love emanates from. And I can explain that and be that with anybody who's willing to play that game, except for the people who are stake in the ground, entirely certain that something's wrong with them, and they're not going to be happy until I tell them that there is.
So tell me, how can people who really follow your mindset, your logic, how can they find you? Because I'm sure that other people who are dealing with mental illness will say, oh no, this is BS. But for all the others, tell me exactly how they can find you.
Yeah, again, I think the whole idea is you're going to have to, the way to find me is at drfred360.com, or you can find me at welcometohumanity.net. It's my more expanded approach. I have a number of books that I've written, 2 books and a third one on the way. I've created some courses. This is my 250th podcast that I've been a guest on. I've dropped my own 300 podcasts as a host. So you can find all those at those sites as well. And I have a school group as well. I have a school group that I'm inviting people to come in, skool.com/welcometohumanity, another place to notice me. And I'd love to have people come into the group. I'm glad to talk to anybody about anything.
Beautiful. Well, Fred, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time of your busy schedule to join us. And thank you again for participating and inspiring our many listeners with your incredible skills as a psychiatrist. Now, we hope that you've all enjoyed today's episode. I'm also very excited about the many upcoming guests that we have scheduled for season 24 of the Happiness Journey podcast, filled with inspirational knowledge, just like the one that you listened today. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. Misdiagnosis can be a silent thief, robbing individuals of the understanding and support they truly need. When we label someone based on incomplete information, we risk overlooking the real struggles they face, potentially causing more harm than good. Judging others based on misdiagnosis not only perpetuates stigma, but also blinds us to the true potential and the help they may need. It is crucial to approach each person with empathy and a commitment to truly understanding their unique journey. In doing so, we can break the cycle of judgment and offer genuine support where it's needed the most. My name is Dr. Dan Amzallag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.